This is an exciting journey. You're not going to be bored anytime soon.
Welcome, adventurers. Today's podcast features Bill Strand, the headmaster of the Chameleon Academy. You'll recognize him as my partner in crime on Wednesday evenings as we do the live show. I learned a lot about him today. You'll probably do so as well. Buckle up and enjoy this adventure. All right, welcome, Bill.
Hello.
This is a little odd. It feels like we should be dancing to music, which will be put in later.
Where's my music?
It's a kind of a little crazy to be interviewing my live stream partner usually, but this is might be very interesting to everyone to learn all about you and who you are. So, how would you define
Okay.
yourself?
A wanderer that's trying to figure out how to make this all work.
Okay.
I am a lifelong chameleon keeper, herpetoculturist, and I focus on chameleons, and that's just been my passion for pretty much my entire life. And I am trying to figure out better husbandry. And just on that quest of better husbandry, I don't know when it's going to end. And I just use whatever tools there are for the time that I'm doing it. When I started, there was listservs, then there was forums, then there was Facebook, and now YouTube, podcasting. And so I just use whatever tools are available. And in 5 years, who knows what'll be available, but I'll be there too.
Okay. I think we've decided on many of these live shows that you can never retire. So I don't know why you're thinking it's ever going to end. It'll end, suddenly in the middle of the night as you pass away, I guess, in another 100 years. So because the people want you
That's
to
right.
continue
But
what
by
you're
then,
doing. So you're popular. So.
By then, I will have programmed AI to do it for me, and so you'll never know.
There we go. It seems like I can almost see that kind of happening now. Although you start to listen to podcasts and YouTubes, and you definitely know when an AI is doing the thing. It just seems a little not, I don't know what we call it, not human or whatever, but it seems to have the right script, but it's like, this isn't a human being. Kind of like when you get a robocall. But anyways, so now that we've defined you, what species have you bred? I know that we didn't define yourself as a breeder, but or what species have you kept?
Oh my goodness.
Or what? Maybe we should just. I know there's like this might take all the whole podcast for the species list. I guess maybe
I've been around.
But
let's just say.
Let's talk chameleons.
All right.
First of all, chameleons. What is your favorite chameleon species?
Oh, that is between a Jackson's chameleon and a Daramensis.
Okay.
I seem to like those three horns, but right now I'm really focusing on Kaluma O'Shaughnessy.
Okay. All right. Why?
Well, number one, it's a personal challenge. I have bred Kaluma. I've had eggs from a Kaluma species, but I've never completed the life cycle of a Kaluma species. And so I think that genus is something that it's a personal goal of mine to complete the life cycle of a Kaluma species.
All right.
And for those not familiar with chameleons, Kaluma is a genus. It's a genus from Madagascar. It has a number of chameleons. The Parsons chameleon is part of the Kaluma genus. And O'Shaughnessy is a smaller cousin of the Parsons, but brightly colored. Got the emerald green and the turquoise blue gular. It's an impressive species. I enjoy it very much. Wait a minute. I did hatch out some brevicorn way long ago. A little bit back when I did that. I don't even think I want to count it because it was so much of just like, this was 20 years ago where there wasn't a whole lot of control. My husbandry has grown so much over the decades that I've done chameleons. Like 20 years ago, I don't even consider a lot of that bragging
Mm-hmm.
rights, except for Daramensis, because I put in an enormous amount of effort into figuring out how to breed that, breed Daramensis. I went through a lot of experimentation. I experimented on the laying bin, and so I put in a lot of effort. Pardalis, Jackson's, some of these species, I put in a lot of effort and
Mm-hmm.
research. Other species, I can say I bred them, I can say that I hatched them, but I can't say that I can take credit for doing that because these animals are designed to do that. And it's actually, we get in the way of them doing it with our husbandry. And so when we get out of the way, they will do it. And so all I can say is I got out of the way and I tried a novel incubation method, but it's like I facilitated it, but I can't tell you the formula as to how to do it. And if I don't understand what I did enough to help somebody else do it, I don't consider that something that I can take credit for. It happened, and I didn't do something stupid enough to prevent it from happening. That's, yeah.
Much like the brevicorn that came to me with eggs in the bag, and I incubated them and I got them to hatch out. I can't really take any credit for that other than the
Yeah.
incubation, and we'll have to see what I can do with the ones that survive. So, yes, okay.
Yeah.
So,
And I don't want to diminish the achievements of people who got in a wild caught and it just had eggs within a couple of days and they hatched out eggs. That's an
mhm,
achievement. I mean, some of these incubations aren't easy.
mhm,
So I don't want to diminish the achievement of anybody. But when you start talking about bragging
mhm.
rights and saying, yeah, I bred that species, well, make sure you actually did
The
something.
whole,
And
yeah,
that's what I want to
the whole life cycle when you took it from an egg and you raised it up and you let it breed and had eggs and those eggs lived. That's a whole life cycle. So I think that's
Yeah,
as
and
you
for
said.
me, I'm an educator in the chameleon community, so I take pride in how well other people
Mhm,
do, not how well I've done it, how well I can help somebody else do
mhm.
it. And so if I did enough research and I did enough and I understood enough of what I did that I can help somebody else do it, that's when I say, okay, I can take credit for actually doing something here.
Okay, great. Sounds good. So, what other reptiles do you? I guess I can't ask you what other reptiles have you had because there's still a huge list. So, what were your
Yeah.
favorite 3 or 4 reptiles that you've owned or that you've had experience with?
Well, I have a juvenile emerald tree
Mhm,
boa that I am very partial
mhm,
to. The waxing monkey tree frog, Philomedusa savagii. The Euryplatus
mhm.
fantasticus, which is the satanic leaf-tailed gecko, and of course, my wife is taken over that and is doing incredibly well.
So, taking over that,
And
I
I've
thought those were hers. That those were yours to start with, and she claimed them, huh?
oh well, she didn't just start with them. She was helping me. I had them for who knows how long since we've been married, and she would help me with them. So uh, and and that's where she got her training.
Mhm,
And then one day she came to me and said, "I want my own geckos." Okay, got her own geckos, and then rest is history. You
mhm,
just go to Misty Mountain Fence on Instagram, and you see what happened.
mhm.
It's just she's
Absolutely.
just blown up with that. I
You can't argue with that, Bill, though, because she has no excuses to stop you from getting new ones when she goes her way at a reptile show and you go yours, and you both come back with something, and it's even.
Oh, she goes to reptile shows without me. What the heck?
Right.
She's got her own agenda. She's got her own stuff to do. So it's like I guess I just sit back and watch it happen. But if you're gonna have a wife get in really passionately invested in something, the Eurypleus fantasticus is just an incredible species, and so I really enjoy watching her work with her babies and all that kind of stuff.
And that's kind of like being a grandparent, I've never experienced it yet, but you get to raise it up and then let someone else take care of it. So their babies. So that's awesome. So great. Okay.
Yeah, she just walks into the room where I'm doing something, says, "Could you hold this for me?" And I get this newly hatched Your Plate is Fantastica sitting in my hand, little demon eyes looking at me, and I go, "Oh, this is heaven.
Mhm.
This is heaven."
That's right. And then you fill it full of sugar and you hand it back to her, or whatever the, the complimentary thing would be. So, okay. So, what are you currently up to?
Currently, I am working on like two paths here. Well, I'll just say
Mhm.
overall, I'm working on uh, pushing, uh, finding new ways for the chameleon community to move forward.
Okay.
And that is in a number of
Mhm.
aspects. One is learning more about chameleon
Mhm.
husbandry. And I know out there there's this huge debate as to how much more do you want to know. Some people are very happy with what they know and don't want to move forward. And where does it end? And well, with me, it
Mhm.
doesn't. And so I will continue to work on chameleon husbandry. A big aspect that I'm looking into now is understanding the dry season. This is something that we generally don't pay any attention to. And in our care guides, we have chameleons being cared for. We figure out what the ideal day is, and then the chameleons live that 365 days a year. Sounds good, and it's worked very well for us, at least for panther chameleons and veiled chameleons and such. But the dry season for a number of chameleons, I mean, it's different for every species in every area, is a significant part of their life. And although, yes, the dry season is harsh for many chameleons, and in fact, it wipes out populations to where all the adults die and the entire population is represented as eggs in the ground. I mean, that's the harsh
You
dry
wouldn't want to
season.
do that, though, Bill, right?
Yeah, that's well, what we need to do is understand how the dry season affects every species differently, and even locales. I mean, panther chameleon locales. There are some locales where the dry season just means yeah, whatever. But in some locales, the panther chameleons actually have to dig themselves into the ground to survive. So it's understanding the differences between those areas. And like the chameleon I'm working with, Kaluma Oshonesiai, that comes from Ranamafana National Park. And during the dry season, it's still wet. So they don't have that huge change. But the dry season, it does become cooler. So it may be, this is part of what I'm and we in the chameleon community do is figure out, is there anything important about the dry season? It's cooler. Does that give the chameleons a rest? And is that important to longevity? Is that important to their life? Maybe we don't have to change how much water goes to them. Maybe maybe it's good if we just have a cooler time of the year so they can rest for 6 months. And it's those kind of questions that come up that I want to answer. And then also, when we talk about taking care of the community, I'm actually I've actually doing a class on 3D printing for reptile keepers, and I'm trying to give an awareness of what we can do with 3D printing in our cages, because so many of us have these niche applications, and with 3D, we're never going to find somebody who's going to manufacture something for us. And so with 3D printing, I mean, I just got all sorts of stuff that I've designed here that is, specialty items. And they are of incredible use to me. They wouldn't be used to a whole lot of other people. But that's the beauty of 3D printing. And so I'm actually, I'm giving a class on how to do 3D printing for reptile keepers. I've created a every other month Chameleon Academy journal. It's an electronic magazine that we can just sit and flip through. But in every issue, I'm going to have a 3D printed project that is very applicable to people with chameleons. And so you can go there, and every issue is going to have free files that you can download and you can print out yourself. And like combining two Reptibreeze cages. It's the way to give your chameleons 4 foot by 2 foot by 4 foot tall. all that extra space, and you can do it. It's so expensive to make cages. I have a Dragon Strand Chameleon caging company, and I can tell you it is expensive to make cages, especially if you're doing it by hand. And to make a 4-foot wide cage, it's not. It's you would think that it wouldn't be that much more, just some more in materials, but it's a lot of labor as well. And so by giving out these files, what I can do is I can allow people to print out. I mean, this is one piece. There's a lot of pieces. They're simple, but they're highly, got the dimensions correctly. You can just print these out, and you can get 2 cheap Reptibreeze cages, 4-foot tall Reptibreeze cages. You can put all these things on, and now you have a 4-foot wide cage. And so that's something I'm doing as far as for the community, to grow the community and allow people to give their chameleons better husbandry. So yeah, I got a lot on my plate.
So Bill, you would ask, you've got a caging company, but you're also creating parts or helping people create parts to use other cages. Why? What's the logic there?
I don't think that this is something that would be taught in any MBA program, but somewhere along the way, I had to make a decision as to, am I a caging company or am I an educator for the chameleon community? And I chose educator for the chameleon community. And so I will, that comes first.
Okay, that's
and
awesome.
I want to do.
That's incredible. That's very great of you, and I admire that very much. But I know that an MBA community would not think of you well.
Well, and it doesn't. Believe me, this is not lost on me that I am shooting myself in the foot, especially since one of the things I want to do is create a contest where people send in designs so we can make the perfect nursery cage. Mm-hmm. So people can 3D print their own nursery cage. And this is needed because it's so expensive to make nursery cages. And for those in the chameleon world, the absolute best husbandry for raising up baby chameleons is to house them individually. And it's the one thing that's the hardest thing to do for breeders. And I back in 2013, I actually started the Dragon Strand Chameleon Caging Company by offering nursery cages. And they would be rack compatible, 8 across. And so you have a lot of little cages. And they're great. In fact, I still have the ones that I made over 10 years ago. I'm still using them. I mean, they are solid. And, one of them took a flying leap out of a van as I was on the way to a show. And I picked it up off the ground, and I'm still using it. So these things are solid.
You've got to watch these cages. They jump out just like the creatures.
But they're so expensive. And so if I am on the podcast, I have Chameleon Academy podcast, talking about how we need to keep these chameleons individually. Well, people need a way to do it. And they can't spend $3,000 building up this entire system unless they are really investing for the long term. And so this is a way for me to help the community give better husbandry. And yes, it may shoot down a number of sales of my nursery cages, but the greater good is that people are able to do it for the chameleons. And I don't want this. I mean, I got to say, in a way, it sounds altruistic, but the reason why I can be this way is because the chameleon community has stepped up and has gone out of their way to support me. And so I can do this. And I feel confident that I can, quote, shoot myself in the foot and give everybody the ability to create these cages without buying from me. And I believe, because I have a history proving this, that the community is going to come back and to support me in another way. And that, like I said, I cannot give that as business advice for anybody to do this. But as long as the community is supporting me in the different ways that I have, I can do this. And so that's what I'm holding on to. If I just focus on doing what's best for my community, I just have faith that they're going to come back and they're going to support and take care of me. And if at any time I'm wrong in that and that support doesn't come, then yeah, I've got to go off and go back to my real job and don't not do as much in the chameleon community. And that's just the way it works.
I don't
So
see that happening anytime soon, Bill. You've got rabid fans who love all the stuff you do and will support you no matter how they can. So I think you are doing the right thing, and I think it's going to work out well.
I think so.
I think it's
I
kind
think
of
so.
like Miracle on 34th Street when he sent someone elsewhere to find a cheaper toy. They just kept coming back and had loyal customers. So
I can't explain why it's working. I just know it is. And as long as it is, I am going to do my best for my community.
that's great. You talked about the Chameleon Academy podcast. What are your other outreaches?
All right. So Chameleon Academy podcast is my oldest outreach that I'm still doing. Back at the beginning of the 2000s, I created an e-zine, chameleonnews.com. But yeah, I've been doing the Chameleon Academy podcast since 2015, and that is for the general chameleon public. And we've had so much growth through that podcast because I bring in so many other people, and we get together and we figure things out. But it has grown and matured to the point where it's more intermediate, advanced level. And so I wanted to create an outreach for beginners, specifically for beginners. And for that, I created the Panther Chameleon podcast. So that is a separate podcast, and it is for people just starting out. It assumes no background, and it just leads you step by methodical step through the process of everything you need to know to get your first Panther Chameleon. In addition to that, I've created, there's a website, chameleonacademy.com, which combines everything that I am doing. It is a massive website that has collected so much information about chameleon husbandry. There's a YouTube channel where I put all of my YouTube videos, and people will notice when they go to the chameleonacademy.com, I'm designed this to be a multimedia outreach. So if you go to my anything on there, like just go to the care guides, you go on there, you will say there is a PDF download that you can download. So you've got something to print out. There's a detailed website description of everything in that care guide. There is a podcast, so you can listen to everything about the care guide. And then there's multiple videos talking about the different aspects of the care guide. And so it truly is a multimedia approach to chameleon education. So no matter what your education or your learning style is, it takes care of you, and you've got it there. Reading, listening, watching, it's there for you. In addition to that, I've created the Chameleon Academy Journal, which is a magazine, and that is really it gives a lot of information, but it's really meant to be an experience for us chameleon people to just sit back and enjoy digitally paging through a magazine, and it's an experience just for the fun of it. In addition to that, I have the Reptile Entrepreneur podcast, which is it's more of a passion project. It's meant for me to help other people in the reptile community build businesses, because breeders, inventors, they're generally very good at something. They're very good at breeding. They're very good at putting things together, but there's something that's keeping them from actually getting it to the public. A lot of times it's knowing how to do social media. Sometimes it's, well, how do I talk to manufacturers? And so through the Reptile Entrepreneur podcast, I go over all steps of having a business and having a social media outreach. And so whatever point you need that's keeping you from being an entrepreneur and producing something in the reptile community, you're going to be able to go there and you're going to be able to have, okay, this is how I do it. And I interview people who have done it, who are entrepreneurs. And so you can hear case studies. Whether you are entrepreneur, you want to create a product, or you want to create an outreach, like be a YouTuber, you're going to be able to find what you need at the Reptile Entrepreneur.
Okay. And the content creator, you still doing that, or?
Yes. Okay. And then I have the Niche Content Creator, which is a sister podcast to the Reptile Entrepreneur. And what I did earlier is I separated the two out. For the Reptile Entrepreneur would be actually creating a business. And there's a lot of things that go into that. And then the Niche Content Creator is a show that I wanted to do specifically for content creators. So YouTube, Instagram, social media, if you want to be have content be your main product, you go there. Reptile Entrepreneur is more for breeding and for physical products.
Okay.
So yes, I still do that. I will at this point. The Chameleon Academy is actually getting more attention because there's a number of projects that I need to do there, and I have found all of these outreaches are excellent, are great, valuable for the community, and I love doing them. And unfortunately, there's only one of me.
Yes, there's only one of you, and you need sleep. I noticed that from time to time.
Yeah. And my friends, Sean included, have been really on me as far as taking care of myself and getting sleep, and essentially listening to that podcast guy that says you got to take care of yourself. They listen to what my podcast and they throw the words back at me.
Sometimes you project what you really need in yourself on these podcasts. I realize that, you're talking about limiting your number of species, limiting what to do at how many purchases you have at a reptile show, and getting good sleep. And then I think you may be talking to yourself, but you're sharing with the rest of us. But that's okay. That's good. We appreciate it.
It's my cry for help, Sean.
Well, we're here to tell you that's okay. All right. So how did all this start? I mean, how did you get into this stuff? Is this something you thought of when you were a kid, or is this something that you learned in college? What happened? What's the path?
Well, I had the standard kid story where I loved chameleons, and I just learned everything. Of course, back when I was a kid in 7th grade, there wasn't a whole lot of networking available, and so that networking throughout the chameleon community grew with technology. And so I remember it was just revolutionary when we had a quarterly printed newsletter that would arrive in the mail. And I love that. I love that. But with the internet, communities got bigger. And so I just kept moving with the times and adapting with the times. Anybody remember Yahoo listservs? Well, I was there. And then there was forums. I created a digital magazine at the beginning of the 2000s, and and then after that was Facebook and Chameleon forums, and then Facebook. And so we just go through all these iterations. But my Chameleon Academy, the podcast, that was one of the more significant things that I've done. And I just really loved podcasting. I would listen to it for other things, and and my story is I was thinking, I wish there was a chameleon podcast that I could listen to. Somebody ought to do it. And I just realized, I guess that somebody's me. And so I did it. And it was one of those things that you take a chance on it. I mean, chameleons are very visual. So why in the world do you think a audio podcast would be well received by the chameleon community? And as with most good entrepreneurs, I did not let that bother me. I said, "Going to do it anyways. What the heck?" And to the surprise of everybody, and to the relief of me, it worked out incredibly well, and it turned out to be the center point for us growing as a community. And the reason why it became so powerful of a growth tool is because it wasn't I didn't do it as me saying this is the proper chameleon husbandry and everybody needs to do it my way. It was designed as a growth tool for me. I want to be able to learn and grow. I've already had decades of experience, over 30 years at this time. So I had a lot to offer, but I was not done growing. I still had answers that I wanted answered, questions that I had wanted answered. And so through this podcast, I was able to interview people from around the world, scientists, veterinarians, keepers, breeders, anybody who had answers to the questions I had. I could bring them on. And by having a podcast and outreach, people would agree to be on. And so I all of a sudden had access to so many other people and so much more knowledge that I could bring in. And so the podcast became a depository for the community for all these people who are doing things that normally would not meet. I mean, we got scientists in the middle of Madagascar, and then we have breeders in the United States. Where do they meet? Well, they meet on the Chameleon Academy podcast. And by us all meeting there, we're able to think about, absorb all these new ideas, these new perspectives, and we reconcile them and figure out, okay, which one of these are different facets of the same shape and which of these are contradictory. And so we need to figure out how they fit together. How can they both be true if they contradict each other? And so by being on this podcast, I mean, I was forced to reevaluate everything I believed. And then I had to reconcile the different opinions across the entire community. And there's people who come onto my podcast, and then there's everybody who wants to throw mud, and so they're throwing mud. But anybody who's throwing mud and talking bad about me, there's a kernel of truth in what they say. And so you got to go through all the garbage and get down to that bottom kernel of truth and say, okay, they've got this thing, this experience that they're working off of. How does that fit in with everything that I'm hearing all over here? And so it required me to personally grow and continue to grow. And anybody who was interested in growing could hear the things that I was hearing, and I was sharing my thoughts. And so everybody could grow with me. I just invited the community. I'm doing this, and it's an incredible ride, and you are invited to come along. If you want to come along, 2 thumbs up, you're with me. I'll come. You're invited. And it's still an open invitation. Anybody who wants to learn about chameleons and keep pushing our husbandry forward, join me on the podcast. It's not me telling everybody what to do. It's me exploring the world and giving you the evidence. I come up with conclusions, but you can too. And share with me your conclusions and perspectives. We're in this together. And the more minds we have on it, the further we're going to go.
There's several people that I know who you've inspired to do things. Two Turtle Tom, for example, he's close by, and a good friend of mine here. Now that I met through, actually, I met him at you could listen to the last podcast, but I met him at the reptile show. He learned about your Chameleon Academy, and I was on your Chameleon Academy podcast, and the rest is history.
Well, I really want to encourage, and this is something that you'll learn more about coming up in the near future. I want to encourage more people to get into podcasting. And different than YouTube. Mm-hmm. YouTube is a whole other ball of wax. And when you start bringing video into it, you complicate things. Mm-hmm. But with podcasting, if you come at it with the right perspective, it's an incredible growth tool. And the more people that get into podcasting and have to verbalize what they're thinking, they actually have to think, how do I communicate this? Just that process helps you understand, and you bring up all sorts of questions that you have to answer yourself before you get to it. And so I want to encourage more people to get into podcasting. It's just such an incredible medium, and there's so much that we can do with it.
So, what makes a podcast so enticing to you? What brought you here to podcasting, and how does that differ from the different modalities that we see now?
Oh yeah, there's so many different things. There's the YouTube with the video. There's the podcasting, which is the traditional podcasting is audio. Things are starting to get blurry with hybrid podcasting and video podcasting. But the when I say podcasting, I'm talking about the traditional audio RSS feed podcast. Then there's the blogging and the writing. And then being a TikToker and Instagrammer. Yeah, it's all these different outreaches. But amongst all of those, podcasting is the only outreach where it doesn't require you to do only that. You are listening, which means that you can take a podcast with you when you are commuting to work. You've got 45 minutes, you want to listen to a podcast. There's no distractions, and you are sitting in and you're willing to actually listen to 45 minutes. You go to YouTube and you go to the analytics on YouTube and see what your retention rate is. When people are looking at the video, number one, they're not doing anything else. They are looking at the video, and whenever they're looking at your video, they are always saying, could I be doing something else with my time? Because there is a bunch of cute cat videos listed right over here, and they're calling my name. So there's a lot of distractions. But with a podcast, you have somebody's attention for 45 minutes. And the retention rate of a podcast is typically 80 to 100%. So people are wanting to put on a podcast and they want to listen to the entire thing. And so as long as you're not boring them or annoying them, which is very possible, so you got to be good at it, they're going to listen to the whole thing. And so that has allowed me to explore concepts in depth. Instead of in YouTube where I have to figure out visuals and all this kind of stuff, and I do a lot of YouTube videos. I've got over 400 videos on YouTube, but it's very high level and it's visually entertaining. So I put a lot of energy into just making it eye candy. There's some things that are explained better with a video. So yeah, you've got to do video on some things. It just visually it's better. But for philosophy, concepts, deeper concepts, questions that we ask ourselves in growth, podcasting is just an incredible medium. And there's a difference in the relationship. If you do podcasting right, you can do it wrong. You can totally, you can do podcasting in a way where you don't get any of the benefits that I'm talking about. So there's nothing magic about the medium, but it allows you to develop more of a friend relationship. I love YouTube, so I'm not putting it down. But in YouTube, Instagram, you are on stage. You are performing. People are in the audience. They're watching you. With a podcast, you have the ability to go with people in their life. You're not, when you're in when someone's listening to you in their commute, you're not on stage. You're in the seat next to them. You're a friend that goes with them. You're a friend that's there when they're cleaning cages. You're a friend that is there with them when they're working out. So you can develop a different, closer relationship through podcasting if you do it right. And in addition, back when I started this in 2015, people weren't as comfortable with video. Zoom has made a lot of people comfortable with video, being on video. They weren't that comfortable when I started the podcast. If I started on YouTube, which by the way, if I started on YouTube back then, I'd probably be a lot further on YouTube. I may be a full-time YouTuber at this time because that was during the whole pet tuber craze. And so, but anyway, let's not go back to second guessing my decisions. But I chose podcasting because so many people wouldn't have come on to a video show. They just weren't comfortable with that. And the tools really weren't there to do it very well. There is Skype, but it was horrible. So audio allowed me access to people that I wouldn't have access to before. I mean, I've been able to have people on that brought so much history that I I mean, I've been into this since like 1980, somewhere around there, 70s, late 70s, early 80s. I've been able to bring on people from that were active before that, and even before I was born. And it's just mind blowing to be able to talk to people like that. And I wouldn't have been able to do that with video. And so it's been an incredible experience. I am so glad that I've done it. And sometimes I just feel honored that I have been able to create a digital record of this. Because as we know, if it's not digital, it's gone. I mean, how many people, libraries, if it's not in a book in a library, and then it doesn't exist. And even if it's in a book in a library, who goes there anymore? So if there's no record of it, especially digital record of it, it's gone almost forever. And so I've been able to record certain things that exist nowhere else. In today's day and age, things are starting to blur. There are more and more people are comfortable with being on video. Zoom, the pandemic, now everybody is okay being on video. And so we have these hybrid podcasts, which is exactly what we're doing right now. The tools are here for us to do this easily and effectively. And it's going to come out great. Back when it started with Skype, it was not going to come out great. So technology has moved. And so you'll see a lot of what I do now is the video podcasting, the hybrid podcasting. But I will say the traditional RSS audio podcast is still my main outreach. And I like it. I like it. It allows me to do things that at least I personally am not able to recreate on video.
That's great. So, what's next? What's the future look like for you?
I'm excited to help the community grow as far as what we can do with 3D printing and what we can do with podcasting. And I think that's something that I can give to the community. That's something that I can do. I think we as a community have a lot of growth. We are seeing an explosion of people working with the environment around a chameleon, whether it be in bioactive, whether it be in fogging, dry season. And so we're able to take a look at these things, reevaluate husbandry, and try to get it closer to what they have in nature. And so I'm very encouraged with the number of people who are embracing that. Of course, whenever there are people who are resistant to change, you'll always have that. And this is no different. We have a number of people that are very resistant to change, sometimes aggressively resistant to anybody doing the change. And so it's just going to take time because the change is going to happen. We're going in the direction for the right reasons, and we're finding some important things. And you see this happening in other communities as well, to where we're now into what Philippe de Montjoly is saying, the fourth wave, where we're really looking into the welfare of the animal, and not just our convenience. And have we achieved our goals just because we can raise up a chameleon that looks healthy and will breed? I mean, that's the minimum. And like I said before, they will do that if you get out of their way. That's the minimum. But what's their quality of life? And with that, it's hard to put a finger on. But the challenge is that the higher quality of life we give our chameleons, the fewer chameleons we are going to be able to keep as individuals. And there will be resistance to that. I'm going through that right now. me being on the podcast, the things that I am saying, people I'm interviewing, the concepts that I'm bringing up, I'm realizing I have to change the way I keep things, because once you know, you can't pretend you don't. And so you have to live what you are believe and what you're saying. And so it's a huge change for me as well. All these things that I am saying. So it's not like I just want to sit here and say, oh, everybody else, uh, whoever's being a breeder and keeping hordes of these things in minimalistic husbandry, it's not like I'm picking on them or want to pick a fight with them. It's like I'm just going forward in figuring out what is best for the chameleon, both physically, and we're getting into enrichment and mentally and emotionally. They're sentient beings. They have these things. And for us to ignore them just for our convenience, that's not where I'm going. That's not where I'm going. And I'm not going to, so if anybody wants to come with me on this journey, it's not necessarily going to be convenient. It's going to take a lot of work, and you got to do a lot. I mean, you just think about everything that I've learned since I've done the podcast, and the hydration has gotten nice and complicated, and caging has gotten different. And so, I mean, there's growth. When you grow, it's uncomfortable. And so that's what's going on.
Okay. So this show's called Reptile Show Reporter. So how does this all apply to a reptile show? What do you expect to see there, or how do we put this into a reptile show?
I think the reptile shows are going to be at the tail end of everything that we're doing here. So when you come up with something new, there's these early adopters who say, yeah, that's a new idea, I want to try it. And they try it. And then it trickles down. The more people are successful with it, the more people in general populace are not only are trying it, but start valuing it. And then it starts getting to the breeders. And the breeders are the last in line, generally speaking, not always. I mean, you get people like Jonathan Hill, and all of a sudden he's a breeder who's like on the cutting edge of husbandry. You usually don't see that combination, but generally speaking, the breeders are the last to change. And the reason is because they've optimized things. They have figured out how to be successful having a lot of chameleons in a relatively small amount of space. They've figured out how to keep them healthy to grow up and to breed. And their focus is on efficiency. And so they're the ones who are going to be at the shows, and they're going to be showing how they do things. So as soon as things start trickling down to where the breeders start embracing it, that's when you're going to start seeing the shows change. And you've already started seeing that at the shows you talk about. You've got a Chameleon Cartel, and I know Jonathan Hill, they have got nice, the enclosures are actually showing a lot of foliage, a lot of hiding places for chameleons, which is not what you want to do at a show, because people look and they say, oh, you're selling plants. No, I'm showing you how to keep a chameleon. And for breeders, that's like, once again, shooting yourself in the foot, because don't you want to show off your wares? And you want to have that male panther chameleon up there flashing its colors. Well, we all know that that's stress colors. Yeah, okay, that's how you sell panthers, but those are stress colors. And when you show a chameleon in a cage that's heavily planted, then people don't see it. And so there's not as much interest. And so you don't sell as much. But you start getting these breeders who are actually caring about the impressions that their customers have. Because when they go by your table, that's what they think, okay, that's how you take care of a chameleon, because the breeders are experts, right? So that's how I take care of the chameleon. and it's kind of hard for the breeders because how they're going to explain, well, yeah, I do this because I'm a breeder and I've got to uh, be more efficient, but you should have a different husbandry. Uh, now, I that actually is a huge topic, and I believe that I'm not to the point where I'm going to be telling every breeder they've got to change what they're doing. I I don't. I know there's a lot going on in the reptile community where people are hammering on breeders to change what they're doing. I think breeders should be the last ones to change because they are the responsible for helping the most beginner of people to start with chameleons. And those beginner people need to talk to the breeders and say, help me. And so having the most minimalistic, easy husbandry is actually a benefit. Uh, Now, the more progressive, advanced husbandry, the stuff that I work with, that takes a little bit of effort, and I recognize that. And I think that there's a place for a spectrum of husbandry. Um, Now, I recognize that me suggesting that there's a spectrum of husbandry, number one, has a couple of questions that are begged, as in, okay, so if this is the best husbandry, why are you okay with minimalistic husbandry? And my answer is because we're just not there as a community to where everything can be, this ultimate husbandry. But what we're seeing, you're going to be start seeing, is that the breeders are bragging about individual keeping of chameleons, of their baby chameleons. I mean, and when when the community understands this enough and that values it and goes specifically to breeders who say they individually raise, that's where you start seeing change go on. And you'll start to see that into the shows. If you go to a show and you see a breeder who believes in husbandry so much that they have one chameleon per cage, which is a complete waste of table space, but if they value it that much, that you are seeing somebody who cares about their chameleons more than they do about the business. And really, that is taking care of the business when you take care of the chameleons, but it's a sign of excellence. And so I think what you're going to be seeing at shows is that as these higher ideals trickle down into the breeding community, you're going to see more breeders insisting on being a good example at the shows, even though it's hard, a lot of work, and goes against a lot of business practices. And when I say go against the business practices, I mean when you have the competition who is using all of their table space and they can stack a bunch of chameleons in sandwich containers stacked up and at a low price, okay, that's your competition. Uh, so there's a pressure to cut corners if you're competing on price.
I think as time goes on, we're going to see the consumer be the driving part of this. They'll go to those and they'll see the chameleon in the cage with all the wares and what have you and what it's supposed to be, and they'll see all these deli cups and they'll think, "Wait a minute, that's not the way I want to treat my chameleons."
Yeah.
And I think that'll make the person who's doing it the right way able to raise their prices and actually get the prices that they deserve.
Yes.
But
and actually,
for now, it's not hasn't trickled down to the consumer. Yeah, I agree.
Well, you see, this is where we come full circle. So how does the community get educated? Through podcasts, through YouTube videos. And so this is where the content creators have a critical role to play in helping the community move forward. Because if nobody out there cares about enrichment or individual keeping, then the breeders probably won't do it unless you have outliers who insist on doing it right. But they won't be able to compete. So because they're spending a lot. When you keep chameleons individually, that's a lot of expense. So that breeder is expending a lot of resources, both in money and time, for individual keeping, for doing it right. And if they are not able to be compensated for that, then the number of breeders doing that will drop drastically, because it's not good business sense. And when you have a business, you are under pressure to do things that are good for business. And so that's where it comes back to me to educate as to this is what's important. This is good husbandry. This is the sign of an exceptional breeder. Go and patronize that breeder because they are doing good things and they are pushing our community forward. My feeling of accomplishment is not when I come up with and I say, hey, this is a great thing. We're going to do fogging, and fogging is doing great. My real sense of accomplishment is when I see breeders being successful with the advances in husbandry. When breeders start keeping chameleons individually, I don't care if you fog, mist, whatever. That's just part of our art. But when we're talking about the welfare of chameleons, I'll say getting out there and publicizing that individual raising of chameleons is the way to go. It's not like just another way of doing it. It is the best way of doing it. Bar none, there is no debate about it. The only thing is people say, well, I've gotten really good at separating them out when I've been raised. That in itself is an admission that it's not the right way to do it. And I think even the breeders would love to be able to do what they know is the best husbandry if the community would recognize that. So as much as they may push back on it because it's a lot of work, I would just ask breeders, if you were able to be compensated for giving better husbandry, would you be resistant to it? And I think that is a different answer. So there's my challenge. If it's better husbandry, can I educate the community enough that they can make it worthwhile for the breeders? That's a holistic way of looking at change.
All right. Final words, Bill. Anything else you'd like the adventurers to know?
Other than this is an exciting journey, and it's overwhelming when you start getting into this kind of thing. So go ahead and just start off at the simple husbandry with someone, whoever is helping you, go with their husbandry. But this is such a lifelong journey. Be patient. Don't get overwhelmed with it, but you can be excited that you're not going to be bored anytime soon. This is incredible.
All right. Thank you for being here tonight, Bill. I really appreciate it. I know that we see each other every week on our Wednesday show, but this is a totally different type of aspect. So I do appreciate you being here. Please join our Facebook group, Reptile Show Reporter, pictured here. Thanks.